Hello and welcome to the Grannon podcast.
First draft films from Indie to Hollywood.
We have a very special guest here today, which we'll get to in just a moment. I want to share a quick fact with you, a Grannon quick fact. I hate technology. It frustrates me to no end, and yet I love technology, which is why I do this. Kate,
It's
what's
a
your quick
frustrating
fact?
position to be in, is it not? My quick fact is that if it hasn't been obvious already, I'm growing my hair out back to my natural light brown, whatever it is. But it's been almost over 3 years at this point. So, or
almost 3 years because you dyed your hair right after we established Grannon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. So
That is exciting.
yeah.
And now, question for our guest, Dan Wise of Wise Media Group. What is a quick fact that you just have?
Thank you for having me, ladies. And quick fact is the reason why pirates wear eye patches when they're on their pirate ships. It's a real reason. So when they have to fight the other pirate ships, they got to drop down below deck where it's nice and dark so they can fire their cannons. I'm here because you guys are awesome, and you guys are in my studio renting space, and we're talking about networking today, right?
Yep.
That's kind of the topic.
Yep.
So, I've just got a long history in video content, short films, student films. And it sounds crazy when I say that because you guys actually know like what you're doing when you're doing it. When I talk about it, it was really just the passion of the craft, and I had no clue like apertures and lighting. It was just
I still don't know anything about that stuff.
Yeah, it was.
I've only just recently learned.
Like Brooke knows more about my cameras than I do. I was watching her like do focusing. I was like, how'd she get it to zoom in so big on my microphone? I got to ask her that when we're done. But yeah, so I have a podcast studio. I do prison consulting. I do a lot of my own marketing. I moved to Yakima, I don't know, 7-8 months ago. And I just, things are so expensive. I don't have a lot of time to waste to figure out how to make things work. So I just had to figure out how to do my own type of marketing. And I really kind of, I'm a believer of people tell you no, don't do things a certain way because they're used to seeing it done a different way. But times change, it's not as conventional as it used to be. Not everybody needs to make a commercial on like Comcast on your cable network TVs. You can utilize free resources like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. And if you have no problem talking to people, which, sometimes that's my downside is I never stop talking, but getting yourself out there, I think, and showing people what you can do without trying to charge an arm and a leg, you do things for the right reason. And it seems like the universe kind of gives that back to you if you put the effort in. So.
Nice. Yeah. So you said you've been in Yakima like 7-8 months.
Yep.
What kind of stuff have you been doing since then?
So really, I spent a lot of time here at the studio. We're in the Larson building, and it's a beautiful building. Sometimes I just get stuck staring out the windows because it's so different from the contrast from living in Florida. Shelly's going to go, you mentioned Florida again. Shelly still said talk about Florida too much, but it's, trying to figure out how to the podcast that we do. We have a lot of different stuff. We have our own stuff that's fun, but we've started a new segment, Spotlight Thursdays, where we interview local businesses. And it's kind of, remember speed dating? I don't know if you ever saw speed dating before, but speed dating would be, you have singles show up at like a restaurant, and you've got 5 singles on one side, 5 singles on another side, and the clock starts for 3 or 4 minutes, and you talk to each other for 3 or 4 minutes, and you go to the next person. We thought it'd be really cool to do kind of like speed business, come in and tell you who you are, what you do. So we have 4 or 5 businesses come in every Thursday, and they spend about 10-15 minutes talking about who they are, what they do, and how people can find them. And the whole idea is to like stay local. We can all we're all going to use Amazon. It's a matter of time, but why not, instead of going out to like McDonald's, why not eat maybe a healthier option, probably less money, and you're supporting another local business owner that thrives and creates jobs. So it's just I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of doing things that seem like at some point, if it gets big enough and enough followers, that then people will start wanting to advertise on the channel and sponsor videos. We had a Yakima Fit Food Fresh or Yakima Fit Foods sponsored like today's episode. So just coming across the right kind of people. I use it as like a networking tool to find people. That's how I met you guys.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's how you met us. Kind of coincidentally. We were at a different office moving out, meeting you coming in.
Oh yeah, I forget that sometimes.
Yeah, because you ran into Mario, right?
Mario
And Jared? Or
no, it was Jared.
Jared? Okay.
Mario, Jared, and I think it was one of Jared's little boys.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That's when you guys were still thinking maybe I was like an FBI agent.
Yeah.
Different episode.
Yeah, and that was in September, I want to say,
Yeah.
or maybe because I know I was working at that point, and I got a text from Mario. Hey, I just met this guy who has a business podcast, and he wants to interview you and Brooke, and I'm just like bouncing off the walls, like, oh my god, this is so cool, Brooke! Somebody wants to interview us.
Isn't that crazy? Like,
yeah. Now here we are.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing is when somebody wants to interview me. I don't care who it is, as long as it's like down my alley of what we want to talk about. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting, so yeah, so thank you guys. This is really fun. I don't get to do this very often from this side of the fence.
Yeah, you're usually back there, right?
Yeah, usually in the corner
behind the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned you have the Yakima Spotlight Thursdays. What time does that take place on Thursdays?
So I'll give you a link that you can share with others when you do this, but every Thursday right now we're doing it from 10 to noon. We tried the first week and I didn't think about this, but it didn't work because we're live streaming it. So I tried to coordinate because I'm trying to be respectful of people's time, so if you guys are going to come in at 10 and then we're going to go on next, I'll tell you, you'll show up at like 10:15, 10:20. But the problem is we had this gap from like when the last person finished and then somebody didn't show up for like another 30 minutes.
Ooh.
Oh no.
So I just got the live stream going because you can't end it. So I'm like dancing, I'm trying to like keep the audience entertained. So now we just have everybody try to be here at 10 o'clock. And it was cool because one of Famous Burger. Famous Burger came in today and they brought so much food that everybody got to sit here and it was on camera. So we got everybody in the back eating burgers and they brought these amazing Thai iced coffees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was and next week we got a really cool guy coming in who I want to introduce you guys to because he's got like 40,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel, local here in Yakima. And being the world that we're trying to dive into, we need, for us to be able to succeed, we need people to know we're here. You need people to know your podcast exists. And it's hard to get the name out there to get it started. So having somebody else that's already got a big following like that, it'd be really cool to, yeah, sorry, I heard a large slurping in my ear. Kind of took me by
Sorry, I
surprise.
tried not to.
I've got ADHD. It's like the minute I hear, I'm like, what's going on over there?
You'll fit in well on this podcast.
But yeah, so that's man, it gives me, it's like fuel. I don't make money from my podcast yet, but like if I'm having a bad mood, like when we finish this, I'm honestly probably won't fall asleep like 2 or 3 in the morning because this is like a natural high that I get off of doing this.
Nice.
You guys get it when you make movies, right?
Oh yeah.
And then when the movie ends, you're like, oh, what am I going to do now?
Yep, the post movie depression.
Yeah.
Every time.
So yeah, I think I might have answered.
Yeah. No, I was just asking for more details about that spotlight. That's great. And you said you have a link. We can post that in all the places,
all the things,
all the time. Yep. Little inside joke there. Kate, do you want to briefly talk about some of the projects we're gonna be working on? We already mentioned most of them in our last episode, but we have a brand new one to announce that we're gonna shout out real quick.
Brand new, quote unquote, because
the story's hilarious.
Oh man, so let's see. Origin of this story. So I come up with this idea in like January 1st of 2020. And I had this idea and I write it all down, or at least part of it down, and it's all floating around in my brain, but I wasn't making movies at that time. That summer I shot Tatooine Trouble and the wheels kind of got turning. And then, I mean, you guys, if you've been listening to the podcast since episode 1, then you know the story of how Brooke and I got together and everything. But so that first year we were in business, 2021, we decided, let's shoot this project that I'd come up with. It's called Once Upon a Dance. It's like, and then we expanded it from just this one like dance music video waltz type thing to having two, like being a trilogy of it that tells this whole story of like this girl who gets switched into an alternate dimension and the guy's from this fantasy dimension and he ends up on Earth and they like trade places and stuff.
Totally confusing.
And they're trying to get back to each other and it's and all this stuff. So we were lined up to shoot it in August of 2021. We had the crew, we had the cast, we've been rehearsing, we've been doing all these things.
Mhm.
We were lined up to shoot it, shoot part 1,
Mhm.
which we were gonna film that in like one night.
Yeah, one like 4 or 5 hour night.
Yeah, so we booked the venue, we had everybody, and then within 48 hours, both of our leads canceled on us
For very valid
reasons. We're not hating on them, but we're like, shoot, what do we do?
We already had the venue, the whole crew.
We had the costumes,
we had a dry ice
everything.
machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh snap! Well, what do we do?
Yeah.
Well,
in 24 hours, we pulled together an entire improvised movie, from start pre-production to end production, and then we released it within like a month. It was wild.
And that is called Not What We Expected, and the fruits of that can be seen on the YouTube channel.
Mhm.
And
that is now a trilogy.
Yep.
We like trilogies. What can we say?
I mean, trilogies are epic. Why would we not like trilogies?
That's fair.
So that was attempt number 1. So, and then our lead actress for that one ended up moving to Germany because her husband is in the Marines and he was stationed over there. So she was out of the picture, but the lead, our leading guy, was still in the area. And so then we hired another leading gal, so she was doing the practices, and then I don't remember what happened that time to make it fall through, because we were doing rehearsals, we were doing all these things, but then it fell through a second time, but it wasn't quite like, oh, we're about to film tomorrow, and then everything blew up. But something happened to where that fell through too. Our leading guy, he joined the army, and he's in like Hawaii now, so so we're gonna have
totally
to
recasting it,
start over from scratch with that. So anyway, we're super excited about that. We were doing our planning this week, and we're like, oh, we haven't looked at that script for like 2 years. So we read through it and we're like, okay, this is pretty decent. We just need to make a couple of changes. Do they really need to have a fight in the middle of this little whole thing going on?
Whole dialogue in the middle of the dance?
Yeah, maybe not. So anyway, we're going through tweaking that. But that is what we're super excited about now. We are starting pre-production with that. We last night, I on a whim looked up like historical houses in Washington State, and I found a literal castle on the west side called Thornwood Castle. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna have to show pictures of it or something, because they literally took an English castle or manor house or whatever it is, disassembled it like into bricks, shipped it all the way around Cape Horn, and reassembled it in Washington State in like the early 1900s.
Is that like by Seattle? You
A
said the
little-
west side.
Yes, a little south of Tacoma.
Okay.
Lakewood, I think. Somewhere around there.
On a similar note, Dan, did you know there are 3 legitimate castles in Yakima?
I didn't know there was one legitimate castle in Yakima.
Oh yeah, there's Congdon Castle, which is super secretive. No one's allowed to go there. Surrounded by orchards, gorgeous. You can kind of look up pictures online.
Can you fly? Can like drones fly up to it?
Probably.
Oh.
I would say probably not.
Oh, we're doing
but
it.
I don't know. Let's do it.
We kind of have
it's better
sort
to
of
ask for-
connections.
It's better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
That's fair. But then there's also 2 other ones. I don't know the location of one of them in Union Gap, but the other one is the flower shop, the Foundry, something like that. Findery on 48th.
There's a castle in Union Gap.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
They're not like big castles, but
Is it
they
like-
legitimately meet the definition of castle.
Like Castle Hood. Hood Castle? No.
I've never seen it. I've only seen the other 2. Anyways, just a fun little fact about Yakima for you.
Did you know that, Shelley? Oh, she knew that.
Did you also know that pirates once invaded Yakima
I like this.
and they holed up in one of the castles
Really?
when
and
the law
government
was chasing them?
them.
Wow.
And there was a legitimate siege. I
Like
don't
a
know
big-
when this happened.
like a
I
big
don't either.
like David, David Koresh standoff kind of thing with the castles, like
I don't know.
I don't know who David Koresh is.
Waco, Texas. Oh wow,
We need to get better on our news.
he was the guy that kind of like, I think what he did was amazing. He basically took people off grid, said let's live on.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They made a movie about it. With
I didn't know they made a movie of it.
a pretty recent movie.
Okay, I think did hear this. I mean, maybe it may have been when I was in high school, but I don't remember.
Then they raided him and said that he fought. I mean, it was just, it shows you the overreaching of this is why when I hear people talk about how they're going to go like live on their own land and get people to do it and start these combines and stuff, it's a great idea in theory. But when you start teaching that kind of concept, free thinking, the government doesn't want that.
Oh
kind of
yeah.
No, yeah.
That's a whole nother list.
Free thinking bad.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Think for yourself, people. Don't listen to me.
Indeed.
Anyway, just kind of bring it back on topic. Dan, what is one, I don't know, if you could say one or two pieces of advice for people looking to start networking more and building their
Connections.
connections and reputation, what would you say to them?
Yeah, that's man. So usually when you're networking in general, usually you're either some sort of an entrepreneur or business owner or like an artist of sorts. And I see a lot of the problems, and this is from my own stuff, like I statements. Talk about the stuff that I did that was wrong. When you start a business, people don't, they think like, let's say somebody lends you, $5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever. You had a family member die and you came into an inheritance, however you came about your money, you want to go start a business because you think, well, I've been working at this place forever. I could go start my own business and do better than what they're doing. So you get your business cards, you get your website, you get your logo, you get all of these things that you think you need, which you do. But then you're like, where am I going to get my business from? How do I actually get people in front of me? How are people going to purchase my product? How am I going to maintain clientele and customer service? I think people should spend more time in really understanding like what goes on in the business, focusing on how to build a business plan. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey Dan, can I borrow 50 grand?" I said, "Well, let me see your business plan." They start rambling it off like that's not your business plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like what are your fail safes in this? How do you see yourself actually making money? Why would somebody go to you? Why would somebody buy your pizza versus like Pizza Hut? Well, our pizza is so much better than Pizza Hut. Well, there's a reason why Pizza Hut does as well as they do, and it's not because their pizza is the best. It's their marketing, it's their branding, it's they're not. You really have to start and kind of like reverse engineer that process. And if you don't know how you're going to get your clientele, if you don't know where your client's going to come from, and that's where networking comes in huge, because networking, I'm not going to say it's free because a lot of networking meetings there's a membership fee included, but it's usually not that expensive. Most people have a fear of talking to people, getting up and talking in front of a stage, talking to an audience. And some people have the gift where it's easier for others, but that doesn't mean you can't learn that. Like today we had the improv guy come in and we were talking about it. And sometimes people that never thought they would have that ability, they end up being like some of the best because they're not cocky. They're not, oh, I've been doing this my whole life. I've been an actor my whole life. It's like, yeah, you're still making, everyone's got their reasons. But when you take things like Toastmasters or improv classes, or you start going to group meetings, and when they're facilitated right, when people are kind of orchestrating it and teaching you the things to do, and what if somebody else is successful, what are they doing that you're not doing? And people that you see that have made it, maybe ask them, say, hey, Kate, you're doing really good with your business that you got here, with your production company and filming. How did you get to this point? Well, Dan, you didn't see me 10 years ago when I was struggling running around with a camera. You didn't see the 50 businesses that failed before this. It's not always going to happen on the first go. If it were that easy, everybody would be doing it. So you have to be willing to accept rejection. You have to be willing to accept failure, but identify that as learn from your mistakes and don't make the same mistake next time. And if you keep repeating the same behavior over and over and over again, it just means you're probably shouldn't be in business, because everyone's going to make mistakes. So yeah, long-winded answer.
Let's turn into business advice. I love it. But that really goes hand in hand with networking. I mean, the whole point of networking, like you said, is really to just grow your business, expand your network, hence networking. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Do you want to take a brief breather and tell us what you're watching lately?
Yeah, I actually took a screenshot here because
nice.
I don't want to butcher it. So I'm watching a lot of stuff, but one of the, I'm more into series than I am movies.
Mm-hmm.
Movies got to be, the problem is I like storyline and plots. I like special effects too, like anybody, like any guy. But the problem is usually movies, they have to burn through it so fast because they got to get to the ending.
Oh yeah.
So I'm watching right now. It's called Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, and it's kind of the beginning of how like Godzilla came about. When I say that, people are like, oh, Godzilla movie. It's nothing like that. Like you see very few monsters in it. It's really about the storyline, and it shows it's got a contrast of a timeline of like 30s or 40s is where it takes place, and then it jumps to present day. And if anybody knows who I just said his name a few minutes ago. What did I say his name was, ladies? Here it is. Kurt Russell.
Oh yeah.
So Kurt Russell is one of the lead actors, and then his son Wyatt Russell. And I'm like, man, this guy, I thought it was CGI because he did I say that right? Yeah, because he looks very similar when they would go from in the past to now.
Mhm.
So I googled it, and his son is playing the old him when he was a kid,
Oh, wow.
and then it goes to him as an adult.
That's
That's
cool.
amazing.
But they're basically trying to figure out where these monsters, and the monsters like they feed off of like radiation and things like this. And Godzilla's a good guy, and Godzilla's trying to protect the other monsters from stop the monsters from coming through the portals. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Where is this?
Apple TV.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you guys seen Severance?
No.
Oh, never. We'll stop at that. You got to watch this.
It's good? Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
You guys would dig it because of where your minds are in filmmaking. It's Severance and Monarch: The Legacy of Monsters is probably my two favorite shows right now.
Nice. Well, we're still watching Alchemy of Souls.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first season has 20 episodes, so we're almost done with that one.
That makes sense based on where the plot is currently at.
Yes. So we'll be looking. I think the second season is like way shorter.
Yeah.
From what I saw online, which is sad. But we'll be looking for something new to watch. So maybe we'll have to check out.
Yeah.
That.
Hey,
That's
I pretty much
Apple
have like
TV.
amazing taste when it comes to.
Good.
I don't know if Shelly would agree with me. But what about you guys? What do you guys got going on?
Well, like Kate said, we're still watching Alchemy of Souls. It's a lot of episodes. Every episode is like a full movie, but it's
You
only
say
an
that
hour.
every time.
I do say that because it's true.
Yeah.
We watch an hour long episode, and I feel like I just went to the theater and came back. Like it is so jam-packed full of plot and good plot, like character-driven plot. Every character has their own motivation, and they know what they're doing, they know what they want, or they don't, and that's part of their character. But
Isn't it? How come some shows that are hour long go really, really fast, and then some other ones like, and not because one's better or like the plot is good in both of them, but one you feel like you really got your hours worth, and the other
Yeah.
times it's like, man, it feels like it was 20 minutes and it's over.
yeah.
Because you seems like this one you feel like it's like packed.
Yeah, and it is just over an hour. It's usually like an hour 10, which does help. That extra 10 minutes honestly makes a huge difference. This show is also Korean. It's a Korean drama. Um, and they typically have a lot more stuff just packed into them. More characters, more plot lines, more everything in a typically a good way than like an American show would have simpler plot lines, but maybe they're a little twistier or they have a different flavor.
Yeah, because just think of, and I mean, Firefly isn't like that long, but yeah, you got an ensemble cast, but it's not so much going on as in Alchemy of Souls.
Yeah.
You don't have like, oh, we're going to all these different locations and all these people are doing all these things. No.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
So I think a lot of it comes down to pacing. And the writers of Alchemy of Souls really have that pacing down. Firefly, same way. Like you can have a whole bunch of stuff in a very short amount of time, and that's what makes it feel long. But you can also do that in a bad way and make it feel just too fast and confusing and over their heads.
Is it subtitles or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we watch it subbed.
We accidentally watched it dubbed one time. We're like, ew,
It was
Yeah.
weird.
I don't like it.
I was gonna say because some of the Korean shows that I've watched, the subbing is horrible.
Oh,
I'm sorry, the dubbing.
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the dubbing is horrible, but like German shows, the dubbing is amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a German show I watched, but it was another European language. And I watched it dubbed, and it was pretty good. I didn't finish it though, and
You
I
know,
don't remember what it was.
You got to give people like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon credit to that because
Mhm.
prior to them, it was only English shows.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there was nothing. And I think almost all the shows I watch now, very, very few are American based. And when
Mhm.
they are American based, I almost have like my expectations are kind of low.
Yeah.
I hate to say that.
No, that's become true.
Yep.
Somehow America, maybe it's just Hollywood, but somehow we've lost, I say we in the general term, not us. We've lost that really good storytelling ability. I think we used to have it, There's been some really great stories.
And movies are just, they're almost trash now.
Oh,
There's
gosh.
what's the one we talked about it last week? The one with the Caviezel?
Sound of Freedom.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like that was an amazing movie,
Mhm.
which I didn't know if it's like, man, it's going to be a movie. They got to put so much into this in a couple hours. That's why some of these movies now, they're like 3-4 hours long, which I can't do.
Yeah.
I can't sit there for 3.5 hours in a movie theater, but yeah.
I think it's all cyclical. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sure, I mean, and even who knows, in 50 years, people might look back and say, oh my gosh, there were these hidden gems of movies that nobody found or nobody
I'm sure there are
appreciated."
nowadays
'Cause
that we
that's-
don't even notice.
I mean, what was it? It's a Wonderful Life, like one of the big Christmas classics. Apparently, at the time it came out, it was a total flop. Nobody cared for it at all. But now everybody loves it. So I don't know.
There's a TV
We'll
show
see.
that Shelly started watching, The Kroll Show. It's a comedy, and it flopped when it came out, but it got rebooted in Netflix. Not rebooted, but kind of like refound, and it's a fucking gem. It's like amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of good stories too in the American world that I've noticed so far. A lot of good ones tend to not get a budget to look good in certain ways, and so they don't become popular because everything is about looks. Everything's about the visual now.
Yeah.
And it really sucks because then you're losing out on these amazing stories just because they didn't have a $20,000 or $20 million budget. They only had a $20,000 budget, which is like
Man, what would
nothing.
we do with $20,000? We would do so much with $20,000.
Yeah. Dan, you said you've been in Yakima like 7-8 months.
Yeah.
What were some of the first steps you took to break into this community? How did you meet people? What did you do?
Preparation is key to everything. So great question. Great question. You get a high five.
Thank you.
All right.
Because
I'll
all
give
the
you one too because you're friends with her, so it must work. So before I came here, I kind of knew because I had the studio in Florida, so I kind of knew I wanted to ingrain myself here doing the same thing. So I started scouring Facebook for like local Yakima Facebook groups, and I met Tony White, who owns the Facebook group Talk Yakima, which is, I don't know, like 3,500, 4,000 members or whatever. So I kind of reached out to him, told him what my plan was, and he immediately started promoting me, what I was doing, coming to Yakima. I think a lot of people didn't really think I was going to open a studio because a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to go open a studio. I'm going to do this. And, you know, like you guys were talking about making movies and all of a sudden last minute people aren't showing up. Like everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face and the plan goes sideways.
Yep.
But I already had all the equipment, so I knew I was going to do it. And the biggest thing was finding a location. And I needed a location that was going to be something easy enough for people to identify, not be afraid to go to. Like we looked at some other offices that were kind of in like sketchy areas. And sometimes a lot of the people that we want to interview are like single women, like kind of by themselves, or they might have their kids with them, or like, you know, like stuff that we see all the time. So when I came across this office in this building in the Yakima, in the Larson building, downtown Yakima, the price was just, because it's not expensive here. It's like relatively, it's like $850 a month for this office, which includes electric. And compared to prices what we're used to, you know, we were paying more than that in Florida. We were like in a pretty good ghetto spot. Like you have to like really be careful at night, roll your windows up, drive really fast. So prepping and trying to find out like what you're going to do, I was networking before I got here. So, like the day I got here, I already knew people that were going to be able to come and help out. Know your audience.
Yeah. I have a question, unless you have one.
Go for it.
What would you say to people who say, oh, I don't have the personality to be a networker. I'm an introvert. I'm XYZ. I'm this and that.
I mean,
everything can be an excuse, obviously, but
I think, you know, look, there is legitimate. I was not a extrovert. I was very much an introvert growing up. Like I was afraid to talk. I couldn't talk to girls. Like it was just, and it wasn't until I got into like theater in school and started kind of forcing myself to be uncomfortable. You know, if you live in a state of complacency and you're always doing what's easy, then, you know, just admit it to yourself. Say, you know, I don't want to go do these things because I'm not ready to come out of my shell yet. And the problem is you can't force somebody to do that.
Yeah.
The best thing, like me and my girlfriend go through this, you know, she's going through the process right now where she's trying to get out and do more networking and stuff. And it's not easy for her, but I've told it to her a million times. She heard it from somebody else, like and she even said it. She goes, "It's the same thing you say all the time, but seeing somebody else go through the same thing and say the same thing, it was inspiring to her." So I think we have to encourage people to. You can't always be the one that's going to have the magic sauce to tell somebody. Sometimes they got to hear it from who they want to hear it from. Like how many times has your mom told you don't do this, and then a stranger says it, and it's like you heard it for the very first time. So when somebody says that, I think they're just not ready yet, and challenging them is just going to put them further into their box.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to encourage them to just look, if you're their friend, at some point they're either going to pick it up or they're not, and birds of a feather flock together type of a thing.
Yeah.
I believe a good friend is going to tell you what you want to hear versus what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. And they're just not on the level yet, but networking is hard. because it's not easy talking to people. It's just not. And you're
My
going
least favorite
and,
thing.
and you do stand up sometimes, right? Like
Improv, yeah.
and that's got to be pretty tough for you.
Honestly, not really, because it's not myself. I put on a character, and that makes all the difference.
It's the same thing you're doing in networking.
That's what I've learned. Yeah.
Even like talking in a microphone. The reason why all three of us like to wear headphones is, sure, it looks cooler for a podcast, but my voice changes when I have my headphones in. When I hear myself, it goes much more like that Barry White monotone voice. So it's just we do what we need to do to, because this is not really who I am. I'm much goofier than this in real life. But you get to pretend, as long as you're doing things that are going to put you into a better position, it's not hurting anybody, and you're doing things for the right reasons. You have to be able to question yourself and say, why am I not where I want to be? And you can find a million excuses, but chances are you haven't pulled the trigger yet.
Yeah.
And I will say, Brooke, and I know you've been doing this on purpose, but like a couple of years ago, you were like, how do you, and I mean, not that I'm the greatest networker in the world, but I make friends and I talk to people very easily. I wasn't always like that either. Brooke's like, how do you do that? And now you're doing that. Now you're the one asking all the questions and like leading this whole thing. So yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't think I would have known that if you didn't say that, because you seem very confident.
Yeah.
Thank
you do. Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of that just comes from practice. I just kind of had to force myself, because it's something that I really wanted. I wanted to have at least the basics of this communication networking skill, so that I'm not like a failure as a business person and a person in general. Like, how do you make new friends if you don't talk to people?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it has done wonders in my life. Only since I started doing that was I able to go out on dates and meet my boyfriend. Well, not meet him, but actually start dating him. But
Which is a very cool guy, by the way. I got a chance to meet him.
you.
I liked him.
Yeah, I do too.
That's good.
But yeah, and so it's helped me just kind of forcing myself, because I want the end goal, and I saw that this is how I get there, and I wanted it bad enough that I just started doing it, and it has really changed my life in a lot of ways. So that's my advice to anyone out there who is like me, extreme introvert. I'm actually not an introvert anymore. Part of that is I got mental health help, and the other part of that is I just chose to um, I saw what I wanted, and I went for it, and it was hard, but it was very worth it.
Do you guys think labeling creates kind of like almost a distraction in trying to change who you are? Like when you're labeled like, oh, you've got ADHD, this is just how you are. You're an introvert. You almost accept these titles.
Sometimes, yes. I think it depends on how you take them. For me, being diagnosed with depression was helpful, because it gave me a path. Before that, I was just lost, wandering aimlessly. I don't know why any of this is happening. But then I saw I was diagnosed with depression, and my therapist was able to give me tools to help with that, and it helped. Yeah, I'm no longer depressed. I haven't.
Was it a combination of like action based and medicine?
No, I never took medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be very much not medicine. I don't like pills as much as possible. And so it was all therapy and
Nice.
meditation work, and yeah.
Impressive.
Thank you. What else? I have not been diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm like 100% positive I am. And
which is okay, right? Because we look at
yeah.
it like it's not a flaw. It's only a flaw when you're not aware of it. When it's in your blind spot, you don't realize.
Yeah, because once I learned that I have these symptoms, I was able to use those tools.
To your benefit,
exactly.
yeah.
And so I think if you're the kind of person who wants to be a victim, you're going to use those labels and be like, oh, I'm so this, I can't do this.
It's just an excuse.
Whereas if you're the other kind of person, you see this label and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit different than some people. This is what I need to do to achieve this goal instead of this. So it's just a different way of doing things.
We welcome the land of the misfits in this house.
Yeah. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of labels, because with my personality, especially the way I was when I was younger, I would take personality tests like the Myers-Briggs or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, it says I'm an INFJ. Now this means this and that and everything about me. Now I'm just like 10 years later, I'm like, oh, that is so ridiculous. Why did I get so... I'm just who I am. I'm not gonna be put in a box. Like,
yeah, you get that label and you're like, oh, this is everything about me, kind of.
Yeah, and now like I I know people typically say introvert and extrovert is like, oh, that's just like set 100%. That's who you are. I don't think it is.
No.
So
we all
yeah.
have like a spectrum of where
Mhm.
we're not all right in the middle. You
Yeah.
might be more extrovert than introvert, but it doesn't mean it's like if you go to the gym and you're really good at doing biceps, but you suck at doing legs. Well, maybe you should be doing more legs than
Yeah.
biceps
Mhm.
because you want to equal out.
Mhm.
You guys played role playing games before,
Oh, yeah.
right? D&D, vampire, things like that. You create your character. You got all your attribute points, and the more versatile your attributes are, the better your character is. You don't put it all in like dexterity or put it all in strength. You want
Yeah.
well balanced, and that's how we live as humans. But like what you
Yeah.
just said, all these labels, it shuts down people that are already looking for excuses as to why they're not where they. Oh, you must have, I had a guy in here that was telling his girlfriend that I must have this because I grew up like as a rich kid and all these things. It's like, no, motherfucker, I went to prison. I grew up in a trailer park. Like, it's because I changed what was important to me. And I was willing to, when everybody else was going out and doing things, I was at home creating thumbnails and, skipping, going out and drinking to do like what Mario was saying earlier. Her husband was in here talking about, if everybody did what felt good, everybody would just be out doing drugs all day long and going out and doing all these horrible things because it feels good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is stuff you could talk about like all day long.
Oh, honestly, yeah.
But I also get what you were saying, Brooke, about how labels can be useful.
Mhm.
Like, it is good to have a path, but I also believe sometimes if somebody says often enough, like if somebody just constantly says, "Oh, I have ADHD," then they're just cementing that. If that's something that they want to if they're like, "Oh, I want to improve my attention span," saying constantly, "I have ADHD," tends to do the opposite. If they're just solidifying that in their mind by just constantly thinking about it, like, "Oh, I have this, I'm this way," but
We live in some really effed up
Yeah.
times though, where like the younger generations, my kids specifically, they're a little bit younger than you guys, and when they're told something like that, like they 100% like, well, no, they're fixated on, well, I can't do these things because of that.
yeah,
And
that's the problem.
And I'm sure there are some people that really do have it more severe, where it almost becomes like um, autistic to an extent, where there's just certain things that they probably won't be able to do. But the average person that I come across, like if you told me you got ADHD and that prevents you from doing certain things, knowing you and seeing what you do, I would say that's bullshit, because I bet when it comes to making a movie and it's time to go show up at 8:00 and you got to be, I bet you do that just fine. So it
just like selective,
yeah, just because you don't enjoy doing
selectively
it,
choosing to do or not do things.
so that's where the challenging, that's where challenging our beliefs comes in, is an important thing to do. And understanding, most of our friends will sit there and agree with us though. So yeah. But then when as soon as you turn your back, she's like, man, she's always using that as an excuse.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you say that to her face? Maybe she'll hear,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think the bottom line that I'm hearing almost unanimously is like, it really depends on what your end goal is. Are you a person who wants to grow and heal and achieve your goals? Or are you a person who wishes you could do that, but is not willing to make the steps to do so?
Boom.
No.
Yeah.
Totally on topic, but that was awesome.
Networking.
But it all really, that is networking in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Because in order to network, you have to get out of your box. You got to talk to people. You can't make excuses why you're failing.
You got to know what you want.
You got to know what you want, and that might change. What you want today might change tomorrow, and
it should change.
It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
It's not like you're whatever age you are now. Me and Shelly were talking about this yesterday. As we see older people pass on wisdom, it's like, I wouldn't trade my youth for the wisdom that as I'm 45 now. What I know at 45 versus 35 is just night and day. So I wouldn't want to go back to like, well, I do want to go back to like instead of dad bod over here, but it's the give and take is the wisdom is incredible, because the level of comfort and the lack of insecurity that disappeared, or how all the insecurity disappeared and I become more secure, being able to make a fool of myself in public. Like, I used to not be able to do that. It was so like having those nightmares where you're naked in school, like standing in front of a class, stuff like that would like rock my world. Now,
Yeah.
let's go to school naked.
Let's not do that. Not recommended, folks.
You guys are so organized over here. I got to take notes. They got like laptop. They got a timer over here.
Yeah, this is new. This is new as of
yeah.
this year. But
I
last
like
year,
it though.
last season it was like, oh, we have notes on the phone. Oh shoot, I wrote something, but we talked about something else and I didn't write it down. What do we do?
We had a whole episode of we don't know what to talk about.
Oh my gosh, that was
a
our
whole
worst-
episode.
That's what the episode was called.
No, well, I don't
Oh,
know,
that
but
would
it
be
was literally just us not
hilarious.
knowing what to talk about.
So there were books at the studio we had at the time, so we just picked up the books and read like paragraphs from the books.
It was a horrible episode. Anyway, we have this now, and
Yes.
I just want to wrap up this topic of networking.
I did want to add one more thing
Go
real
ahead.
quick on topic. So like literally yesterday, Brooke and I were we're going down our list of guests and people we wanted to invite, and literally on the topic of get out of your comfort zone, there was this guest that we wanted to invite, and we're like, why would he ever want to be on our podcast?
He's like a legit professional in the film world.
Yeah.
Not quite. He's not in Hollywood or anything, but he makes a living at what's it called? Steadicam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to spill the beans.
I didn't
on who
spill
it
the
is.
beans.
Anyway, so there was this very fancy person. We're like, what do we do? We're so scared to. We're like,
so they chose me instead.
No.
so we're like, well, the worst he could say is no. So we just sent him a DM, and he's like, I am so in.
Was this so? Were you talking about him the last time you were here?
No,
because I remember
don't
you were
think
talking
so.
about somebody that you guys were like, I don't know if they want to do our podcast, and I was like, why would you?
I don't
think
know.
That
so?
might have been.
Why would
Maybe
you-
I don't know.
I remember saying, why? Don't think about yourselves like that.
Yeah.
You know.
But it was just like we're just gonna DM him, and he was like, yeah. And then he also was like, hey, you should hire me to do something, and we're like, what? And
He
then
wants to work with us.
he wants to work for us, and then we're like, oh, I don't think we could ever afford you. He's like, of course you can. Just let me know what your budget is.
You both are gangsters. You just don't know it yet.
So now he's gonna be the DP for Once Upon a Dance
Aw,
project.
that's so
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations. man.
Anyway,
Thank you.
So that's just an example of just the whole like
Mm-hmm.
getting out of your comfort zone and
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
expanding.
don't-
And with like,
don't assume. Don't
Yeah.
don't assume the
Yeah.
answer.
Like the
Yeah.
worst thing they could say is no, but actually the worst thing they could say is no and laugh in your face publicly. But honestly, that's not really a big deal.
yeah. And this was over Instagram. So.
Yeah.
Just imagine somebody says no and they take a video of themselves going ha ha ha.
I'm
That'd
pretty sure that would backfire miserably on that person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So Dan,
Yes.
we are running a little long here, but do you have any last piece of advice or wisdom or anything you want to say about the vague topic of networking?
Dan is wise after all.
Oh, jeez. My girlfriend's gagging her. Look, guys, just start. Just get out there. Stop making excuses for why you want to. Even if you don't have your business yet, even if you're still working at, you're working at your 9-to-5 job, you're working at the grocery store, on your days off, go to a networking meeting. There's a million of them around here. Just go to one, because you might run into somebody that you maybe went to school with, and you're like, oh man, how did you get to this point? And he's like, I got into sales. Or you just don't know where it's going to go. You don't have to say anything. Go pay the $10, eat the lunch, and just sit there. You don't have to put a business card out.
Yeah.
Kind of go hang out with different people, go do different things. We do a thing where you come up with for date night. This sounds crazy, but we haven't done it here yet. But in Florida, every Saturday, one of us would alternate what the date was going to be, but we don't tell the other person what it's going to be. Just get in the car, and you trust the other person's going to take you somewhere. You don't know where it's going to go. You might end up hating it, or it might be something like an adventure. And if you look at your life as it's more about the journey than it is the destination, because we're all going to die, but not everybody gets to live. So just start living your life a little bit more. I don't want to say go jump out of an airplane or anything, but you're going to die someday. And if you're either going to have a bunch of regrets, or you're going to go, I fucking lived my life to the best I could. So just do something a little bit different tomorrow than you did today. That's all. One day at a time. People helping people, communities method.
I love it. Yeah. That is awesome. It really is wise. Living up to your name.
Yep.
It's all scripted.
Yeah.
I'm reading it off a board right now.
This 20-word outline. Yep. You read that off of there.
Okay, so to transition into our outro, our question of the episode
There's
is
an X there. I'm sorry. This question is for each of us and for you, the audience. So make sure you comment below, DM us on Instagram, post onto our story, whatever.
Just comment on the YouTube page. Don't bring Instagram.
Don't spam
into
us
this.
on Instagram.
Just keep everything in the same thing. Anyway, how do you pronounce the number zero when you're just speaking it out loud. For me, I typically say oh, like if I'm a phone number, like my number ends in 06, I say 06. I don't say 06. How about you guys?
I say "oh" if it's, like, kind of fast and casual, but if I'm, like, trying to be purposeful, like, slowly spelling it out for a business person who asked for my number or whatever, like, I'll say 0, and just try to be, like, very slow and precise with it, but if it's casual, just be like 503, whatever.
What a weird question. I'm not sure that I'm not sure. Do I say O or 0? I'm not even really sure. Like if I look at the clock, it's do I say 0 Shelly? 509. So I
Mhm.
say oh.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. I'd be curious when people comment. Do you even know what you say, or do you really have to think about it right now?
Mhm.
'Cause,
Like, when I
but-
say zip codes, it's 08.
yes,
It's not 08.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think I'm more of like an O.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think, but like what you said, if I'm being thoughtful of it,
Mhm.
I'm probably using the word 0.
Yeah, if I'm doing it over the phone, I might say 0, but sometimes I say oh, and then when they repeat it back to me, they always say 0. Someone was like, do
Yeah.
they want me to say 0?
Is it Yakima or Yakima?
Was there a difference in what you just said?
Did you stress the second syllable
So-
in the
so-
second time?
I've heard it
Or the
say
third?
I live in Yakima or Yakima. Like,
I usually stress the first syllable, Yakima.
okay,
Yeah. Yakima.
Yakima. So say it faster.
Yakima.
Yeah.
Okay, Yakima. Yakima it is.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then there's Sila, Nashiz, Moxie.
Oh, I don't know.
Google cannot pronounce any of them.
Neither can I.
Natchez. The Sila Natchez Road.
And don't they say doesn't Google say Teton instead of
Mhm.
Titan?
It's ridiculous. Anyways, let us know how you pronounce your O's or zeros, or if you even think about it.
Yep.
I'm
just curious.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Dan, for being on this
Yes.
podcast. This
Oh, thank
was
you.
fantastic. We would love to have you again.
I had fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great way to round up our second episode of the second season with our
Mhm.
first guest for the second season. So
Yep.
yeah. Alrighty.
Alrighty. We will see you next time.
Yes.
We always wave. I don't know why. It's just the thing we started and
We have so many cameras now. I was like,
I was like,
which
all
one
the
do I look
cameras.
at?